Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Todd.
Yeah, hi. My name's Todd. I'm a founder of a company called Claris AI, and we're basically a consulting company where we specialize in integrating AI into existing businesses or new businesses that are starting now or in the future. And also as a co-founder of Patient Wing, which is my previous company, I was a co-founder and CTO there. And worked, we're working on revolutionizing the patient recruitment process for clinical trials. And obviously we've done a lot there, and then now recently I've become a member of the EAC, which is the Effective Accelerationism movement or grouping of people basically on X. Or in other places, but I think it started on X or formerly Twitter. Well, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
And then what would you say is like your unique expertise around AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. I thought about this. So I think my expertise, so I've worked with AI now for a little bit, and I even remember, if you remember, maybe just a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was an AI buzz or boom kind of in the healthcare industry, but it was more around. Like now it's more like chatbots and like talking to it, whereas like there were AI booms before this. It just wasn't in the form of a chatbot. It was usually in the forms of like companies, and I'll give you a perfect example that I think I don't know the exact year they came out, but it was in like let's say late 2000, maybe 2018-ish, maybe 2019. But yeah, so the AI there was like an AI boom, like late, like 2018, let's say, and so at that point, it was different. The companies were like, there was a few, for example, like medical records, right? So they would have companies where they would do the kind of behind the scenes scanning of medical records magically, and they'd like output this list of patients that you could then supposedly work with or use to recruit for your trial. Anyway, so there was like stuff like that going on, but it never really amounted to much. It was just kind of a buzz. Uh, anyway, so my expertise I would say is more around like how to integrate AI into business, or like with using tech or other tech with it, kind of thing.
And then can you recall like a moment? Because it seems like a lot of people on Twitter who are in AI have this moment when they kind of realize, oh shit, AI is like the future. Do you have a moment like that you recall?
Yeah, that was like I would say it was actually pretty recently. ChatGPT. It was like, yeah, I mean, I was like, at the time I was like debating starting like a new company, and I was just looking into AI, and I stumbled upon ChatGPT, and I would say ChatGPT was kind of my first like experience with an AI where I felt overwhelmed with what it could do, you know, like consciously, like cognizantly, like more like that. Because it could like figure things out that you didn't think it could, about you or like about like it wasn't even about like the tech itself. It was more about how it was able to mimic or like do things that you would think that only a human could do, you know.
What is Claris AI exactly? Because I saw it's like ethical AI solutions for businesses. What type of businesses and what's the specific niche?
Yeah, I mean, so Claris, like right now, I'd say like our expertise is mainly around finance and healthcare. So the two founders, there's two founders, and that's me and my partner Paul. Paul, he has extensive experience in healthcare, finance, business, things like that, right? So he's my partner, and I do kind of more of the tech side, right? And so our expertise is around IT infrastructure solutions, and then things like compliance, right? So in healthcare, I've worked in healthcare my whole life. I mean, 20 plus years now, like probably professionally. And in healthcare, like the compliant, like the regulations are very different than most other industries. Like, yeah, I mean, maybe other than finance, where you have various things, but you have to kind of build like you're required to go through auditing, and a lot of industries are. I'm not saying like healthcare is the only one, but it's one of the ones where it's tough. And so the expertise is around like disaster recovery, IT infrastructure solutions, recovery, like what happens when something goes down, things like that. I think that combined with business expertise, workflow expertise around how just businesses operate, how to automate things, and I mean, again, like AI is not really new in the sense like what we're trying to do with AI. It's not necessarily new. Like there's nothing, not really anything new. Well, there is, but like not. A lot of the businesses aren't going to really understand what that newness is. They're just trying to take advantage of it, right? So it's more like that.
I was talking about that. I think you already somewhat mentioned is you highlight ethics as a key component of your branding as AI consultancy. What's the reason behind that?
Yeah, I mean, well, because AI lacks ethics in most cases. And so I think our expertise, I mean, as a human, you don't necessarily need expertise in ethics. I think you just need to understand ethics, and then how can you apply it effectively in business with the AI, because the AI does need some guardrails. And so that's why our it's not that we're like some experts at AI and ethical AI. We're experts at AI technology and we're ethical, right? It's more like that. And I would say that the ethics comes in a lot where it's like compliance, right? Like I mean, most people aren't noticing compliance right now because there's not really any compliance around AI, so it's just kind of willy nilly. But eventually they will. Like the compliance is going to come at some point, and so that's our expertise: compliance, technology, which I think ties in with that specifically.
And what would you say are the current extent to where AI can be used for companies and the limitations right now with the processing power or the understanding of AI for its usage in businesses?
Limitations. Well, I think, I mean, again, I think it's moving, like, what are some of the limitations? Well, I think it's moving very fast, and I think the adoption rate, not that it's an issue, but, I think that that's something I think that will limit it. But maybe that's a good thing because you also need kind of the back end stuff too. And I mean, obviously, like hardware is a limitation, talent is a limitation. Um, uh, you know, things like that, I would say. And then, like I said, I think at the end of the day, I would say regulation, because you can't not have regulation forever. It can't be like that.
How would you recommend, like, just general online businesses utilize AI?
That's a tough one, man. I mean, that's a very tough question. Like, I mean, most businesses probably already use AI. They just don't even, or at least like a lot of the like digital or online, type stuff. Maybe not necessarily brick and mortar, but I'm saying most of them probably touch or utilize AI in some way or some capacity in their daily lives already. It's more of like a specific way of how you can do it, right? Because and so I think it'll be a broad range. I think it'll be case by case, or I think there will be a good bit of case by cases, and that's why Claris AI is there.
And then where do you look to stay up to date in AI and learn new information about AI?
X, X is kind of
X.
my home. Yeah, yeah.
Are there specific people on Twitter you like to follow?
I do. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. He's a big guy on X, and I would say just, and the reason why it's not like I'm just a big Elon Musk fan. I think his technology is out of this world, dude. I think like Tesla and some of the stuff he's doing, I think is cutting edge. And if you really want to know where the tech is going, you just look at some of those things. But I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, it would be like Elon Musk. He's like I would say a set of people that I follow and watch. And then just tech groups, like, you'll have things like the Accelerate, like the EAC. There's a group on X with them as well, and it's basically just a bunch of technologists. We get together and we just have a good time, or we talk ideas, and it's more like that. So I think I mean, X is a really good place to kind of stay in the know and kind of socialize for me.
And what do you think are like underserved markets that AI isn't fixing that you think AI can solve at this moment or help drastically?
Well, I guess I mean it would be any market that's not using AI. Like, I mean, basically the way that's going to work is like anywhere where you're not using AI and you're like paying people to do repetitive things. That's gonna be those are like the first ones to go, and then and again, anyone that's not leveraging AI in the most effective way, they will be replaced over and over time. Right? So.
And the best way these people can like learn and be stay ahead is Twitter and working with AI consultancies. In your recommendation?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I would say you want to stay informed, and I would go to a broad range of sources. I'm saying some of my best sources I would say are X, but there's others, as well. And I think, yeah, but yeah.
What would you say are other sources you also recommend?
Well, I mean, like it depends on what type of content you like. I mean, I'm really good with videos, and I'm a visual learner, right? So YouTube's really good if you've had the right channels, and there would be like AI channels or technology channels. Yeah, I watch a lot of those, but again, I try to focus the content, right? So if it's like, hey, if you're watching videos, let's say on Tesla AI, well, just go to the YouTube Tesla AI channel and watch their AI video, how when they unveiled it and how it works. Just things like that.
You already mentioned you're part of the E slash ACC. How do you pronounce it again? EAC?
Well, EAC, yeah, I say EAC.
EAC. What would you say are like the core components of why you believe in that philosophy?
Well, EX, interesting, right? It really just represents to accelerate, right? And so I think it represents, I think, like a bridge of a divide that was created between like people that like technology and think it should go quick, and then like people that think the opposite or not that, right? And so, uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, but I would say it's a group of people where we like to accelerate, but not just accelerate just to accelerate, right? That doesn't make any sense. You want to effectively do it, and you want to have kind of a focus when you do it. And I always add to it by saying you should accelerate responsibly, which I try to add kind of like a responsible, ethical spin to it. But
And what would you say are common objections to the acceleration movement, and what would be your counter argument against those objections?
well, I mean, I think the biggest argument I hear is like, well, we can't just accelerate, or where does that end, and how does where does that go? And I think again, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad way. I think it's a good question. I think it's a good thing to keep the EAC movement honest, right? Like, we can't just accelerate again just to accelerate. And I think having that polarization or that opposite kind of emotion, I think you want to let in. You want to somehow integrate that so that it's like with it, and it doesn't just break apart. It's not like weak, it's not weakened.
And I'd love to also go more in depth into your previous company, Patient Wing, and you've been working as a CTO for the past 8 years. Um, what was it like, and what is Patient Wing specifically? Because if I'm correct, it helps clinical trials and it helps participants get connected to companies.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, no, so Patient Link. The idea was to make it so that we can provide treatments to patients with rare disease more effectively or more efficiently, and being able to like give them a good experience because some of them the trial's the only option potentially. Anyway, so there's a lot of different like aspects like that. But Patient Wing, yeah, it's a company where we're just trying to help people save lives, and try to give back to people that that don't have it so easy. Uh, and it started. It was there's four. There was four founders. It was a company. It was one of my first companies that I've ever started, and I took it as like sweat equity. It was sweat equity. And so
Sweat.
so they call it sweat equity, but it's basically I didn't have any money. So when they were starting the company, it was like it's a bunch of guys with money. You're like I don't have money, but maybe I know tech or I have a skill, and I got lucky there, and so they we started the company, and it went pretty well. But I think you start with sweat equity. I didn't have cash to put in, so I took a pay cut and put blood, sweat, and tears into it. That's how I did that.
And I saw that you grew the engineering from 2 to 25 team members and more. How was it like, and what did you learn about growing a technical team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, dev teams can be weird. I've worked at multiple places. In fact, the CEO of PatientWing, I also worked as the chief architect at his previous startup, which he sold since. It's I would say dev teams can be tricky, and I think it kind of I think there's different aspects to it. I think some people think all the little details matter of a team working and like you don't have like especially like you don't have to know all the little like, in fact you don't want to know all the necessary. I mean you want to know as much as you can or you want to know what you need, right? But I think as a team culture, that's kind of like the first, I would say the first like uh you know kind of stake you put in. You need a good culture, and what I mean by good culture isn't necessarily like a specific culture, but it's a culture where like you don't want negativity, right? Things can spread, gossip can happen. That can be like the biggest killer to a big dev team, right? It can spread like wildfire. So I'd say culture. You want to make sure people feel good, and you want to make sure you set a good tone there. And then I would say like just structure, right? A lot of these companies where you see them fail or things that are going on, it's like you go in and there's like one guy, there's like 50 people reporting to one guy, and like so I think like it's culture, and then like a good structure that strikes a balance in accordance with the people within it, right? Like you can't just say one structure fits all, although there might be a one that generally fits and you can start with, but like for example, like you might have like kind of like a VP and then like a couple directors or one or two directors and then some managers. It depends on how big it's getting, depends on the type of work, but you'd kind of structure it, you'd start thinking about it like that, and making sure just people get along and the work's getting done. I think talent is probably the third biggest piece to it, which is finding the right team members. It's like you need culture to help set it up and find it. You need to kind of set things up, but then you need to find talent for the team to kind of continue and let it thrive or live.
And how do you go about finding and recruiting great talent?
Oh yeah, well, there's no easy way to do that. I think the best way I find is it's like a hustle. I hate to say it, but I sometimes I think like hiring because you could find like the best guy, like, and he might not even fucking know he's the best guy, right? But you just get lucky, wheel and deal. Now you spun like one of the best guys, and like, or like maybe he doesn't know, or maybe you could spin him more on just coolness factor, right? There's so many ways you can do it, but there's so many ways it could fail too. So I think I don't know. I don't think there's one size fits all. I think it depends on what you're doing.
And that goes both for recruiting and for building your internal culture. There's like a basic framework that helps, but on top of that, you just need to specify it to the needs. Yeah, and how do you incorporate AI, if you do, to your own personal like productivity or your own life outside of just for work and other businesses?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, um, yeah, I would preface it with this. I don't necessarily try to use AI. It's like not one of my goals. But in fact, I would argue I try to not use it and still succeed in the things that I need to do in my daily life, right? Because the more I become dependent on it, and the more I need it, the day that it's not there, it's going to be a bad day, right? So anyway, so like that, but I would say at the end of the day, I use it for a lot, even though I just said that. Um, it's like I use it for writing. I think like it helps me with just like, I would say that's probably like the number one thing, which would just be at any point I can go to the AI and kind of help me just rewrite this little phrase or this thing, and that's a very helpful thing. But just or even writing more things. But I started recently doing music as an example, right? And I love the AI music. In fact, there's a platform uh, which would like to talk about here if that's okay with you. But it's one called Suno.ai. It's a music platform, and it's beautiful music, dude. Like the stuff it can do is really cool. You have to check it out. But I do things like that, and I've been thinking about getting into gaming more personally, but I haven't quite broke the mold, I would say, on that just yet.
And then what are you most excited about in AI in the future, would you say?
Tesla, dude. I think Tesla. I don't even think of Tesla as an automotive company. They are, although they are, but you can also think of them as an AI robotics company, which is really what it is. I mean, you start talking about FSD, that almost, I mean, yes, it's in a car, but it has very little to do with an actual vehicle. I mean, it could be in anything. And so I think Tesla's technology, I hope that they are able to pull through because I think their technology is one of the most mature in terms of robotics and digital AI. I'm talking digital AI, not manufacturing. I mean, they have that too. They have manufacturing AI, but like, I would say their digital AI, like their vision, um, all like and right now it's just kind of in an early phase, but it's so impressive already. It's insane. So I think their FSD, like, and they just rolled out that subscription thing, which I think is such a cool idea. You can just subscribe to self-driving. Anyway, so I think that's probably one of the biggest moments of the future will be stuff that of what can come out of that. Now, you could certainly have competitors, and it could be another company that could flourish with it, but I think they're the pioneers on a lot of it.
So while building your startups and stuff, it seems like a common adage, and all my other entrepreneurial friends, they go through a lot of struggle and they go through a lot of mistakes that they make and failures. Have you gone through any of them? And if so, how do you keep going despite that pain and suffering that you feel?
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean I I think it's different for everybody. I think it really comes down to like when you struggle, it's usually because of something unique, not unique, but like it's usually something that you have to go through. So when you say struggle, I think everybody can have their own way of struggling, and anyway, so I think it's like that, but I think struggle does breed um, strength. I think like the more you struggle, the more you're able to like overcome. Now, but there is a point though where you could struggle too much and it becomes too much, right? And that's not healthy, right? It's not healthy for it to be too much because it can then act volatile, right? There's no clear way for it to come out.
And you mentioned Elon, and Elon just he works so much. I still don't understand how he runs all these companies. What do you like most about Elon?
Well, I just like his spirit, dude. Elon, I would say, I don't know. Yeah, like I think it. I don't know. Well, I don't know. He's changed my life. I think there was like an interview that he did where he was like with some BBC interviewer, and the guy like lied to him. He's like talking about I love the interview and I watch it, but I watched like when the first time I watched that there was like an interviewer or like a reporter from BBC. He was doing an interview with Elon and he was trying to like knock on X, like saying about how there's like misinformation or like bad this and that. And he's like, okay, give me an example. And the guy couldn't even provide a single example. So the guy was just regurgitating what he had heard from somebody else, right? And so Elon called him out, and it's like you need guys like that are willing to stand up to like it's like, dude, you literally are just regurgitating what you heard, and you're causing a lot of problems by doing that. and he called it out. So that I like that. So like I would say those types of things. Like he's not afraid to do what needs to be done when when it makes sense.
And then you've been a co-founder of multiple different companies, and this is something I've faced sometimes. It's trying to find a right partner, trying to find the right co-founder. How do you go about building the right co-founders for your own startups?
Yeah, that's probably you know, I, I'm not probably the best guy to ask, right? I still need to learn. I've started companies with people, good and bad, and I've had companies succeed, I guess, and fail. I don't really know a good way, but I can give you a couple tips, right? Like one is, especially like maybe for a starting out entrepreneur, if you don't necessarily have a lot of money, it's good to like surround yourself with people that do have money that are looking to start companies, because the best thing you could find as an entrepreneur with no money is to try to start a company with someone that's like done it or been through it and has a little, like, basically they don't need money. They're able to kind of survive without sucking money out of the company. Right. So I would say like looking for people like that if you can find them. It's not easy, but they do exist, right? So, but just, and there's a range or a spectrum. Like maybe they don't need as much, or maybe they're more self-sufficient, right? So you think like that because the company needs to be able to survive until it's cash flow positive. Uh, Without that, it doesn't really work. So, and if you're more like, I would say if you're a more seasoned like person, obviously you'd want to find people smarter than you. Like you don't want to be the smartest guy in the room, or you want to try to make that like reality. Like you don't want to be the guy that everyone talks to. You want other people. You want it to be more of a group thing.
And you talked about cash flow. Do you recommend startups get venture funding or bootstrap it as much as possible, or how should they go about the funding?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, one. I've thought about it like this. I mean, it's like when you're starting a company, there's different ways you could start it. Like you could build like a whole new technology, like AI, like a LLM, and then say like, this is, and then actually build something new, right? Like, and you could like I use the term like new. It's kind of a dumb term, but the idea is like you can have something new, right? You could have like it's a technology that's built that's brand new, like AI, or at least before it was there, then it was there, and now you could say that that's like a real invention, a real thing, right? And so I think you should fund that like accordingly. Like I do. I mean, I'm not to say they should get all the money, but it's like that is a new technology. There's a lot of applications for it. It's clear and simple how you can exchange that stuff for money, right? But I think where it gets a little bit trickier is when it's like not really new. You're just like it's like you're just building like a web page on top of it to do something very specific, right? That's not new. That's just kind of new. It's really just reusing what's already there. It's not. Now that does not to say that it's not effective or couldn't make money or anything like that, but I think it's like it is different than building a whole new technology.
So get funding based on the difficulty of the requirement. And as a CTO, how do you go about determining when you're building projects out how many engineers to deploy, how long it'll take, and yeah, that's something I struggle with. And I thought I'd build something in a month, and it took me 6 months, and I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's never simple. It's like so. It always goes like this. Usually, I mean, the best way to do it is you think through what you're doing, right? So you'd sit like, let's say you come to me and you're like, "Hey, Todd, I want to build Netflix but with AI," right? Some shit like that. I'd be like, "All right, well, let's think through like how that would work, right?" And you'd have to think about like the implementation, like, you know, um, is there a database? Is it in the cloud? You'd have to start thinking through that. But I think what you try to do is like abstract it out, okay, into like at least major items or major buckets, and then you try to like put um, estimates on them, right? So you'd say like, let's say you're okay. I need to build these 5 tables for the Netflix user stuff, right? And then so anyway, so you'd start like bucketing those things out, and then you'd say, okay, you always start with like in frame of one person, All right, like or at least I do. It's like it's always easier as one person doing all of it, right? And then and then it's like what can be delegated or what can be done to become more efficient in the rhythm.
So what you do is you kind of sit down, think of the entire thing, try to understand the entire process, and then the smaller details you just think of how to delegate that. If I'm correct.
Delegate or do it myself if it helps the rhythm.
Hmm. Yeah. So what is a tour guide? That was your previous startup before Patient.
Yeah, so tour guide was cool. So basically they sell guided tours in Europe, or like I mean they do U.S. too, but mainly Europe. But they sell guided tours in Europe. So like let's say you're traveling to Italy and you want to see the Colosseum, you could book like a thing with them, and then they would take you through like a tour of the Colosseum and like kind of show you specific spots, or you can get like into restricted areas, just various things like this. So they offer a lot of services and a broad range of services around like traveling and sightseeing or like tours. So they brought me on as their CTO early on, and they brought me on as like a lead. When they first hired me, I was like a lead engineer or something like, or like lead developer. And then I was promoted to CTO like after some time. But I learned a lot. Like I would say like that. So I respect the tour guide a lot just because like what I learned there was really like how to the mentality to really um, get things done in business, right? Like, and I say that kind of like in business, right? But because it can be different, right? Like, and then like non-business, right? Like when you're in business, things can move fast and things can get heated. Things can be quick and just anyway. So but you learn how to react fast, and so the tour guide did a lot of SEO, a lot of online marketing, a lot of ads, different things like that, and so there'd be things like code reds, if something went down or revenue couldn't be taken, or let's say like the checkout page was broken, nobody would sleep at night, stuff like that, right? So it'd be like just learning levers in a business that can make or break it, and being able to have control and govern those things um, as best as possible. I learned a lot of that, and then how to apply it effectively with technology.
What would you recommend beginner software engineers to become skilled at their craft?
I think practice. It's like this, dude. Like, I remember I think it just comes down to like repetition, um, and practicing, right? Just doing it. Like it, you know, it's like what do they say? They say like repetition without further insight leads to the same result, right? So like, and maybe that's not always the case, but I think that's like the rule versus the exception. It's like if you keep doing something, but you're not like learning more by doing it, right? It's likely you're you might keep doing it, but it's just going to be repetitive at that point. You're not really
So consistency and just trying to develop your skills every single day. If I'm correct.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What would you say are good resources or books you found that help you as just a CTO and managing the technical part of a company?
So I actually had one of the books. Did you ever read a book called The Mythical Man Month?
Ah, yes, that was recommended by everyone.
Yeah, it's such a good book. It's actually been a while since I've read it, but this book is applied to more businesses that I've interacted with than yeah. I think it's like probably the most book, and a lot of the times it happens where like you'll either have like engineering managers or maybe like directors or shit, maybe even non-technical people overseeing technical people that have no idea what they're doing. So a lot of times what will happen is like most people will just think, oh, money. I'm just going to throw more money at a problem. I'm going to throw as much fucking money as I can throw at a problem because I think then it'll get done faster and quicker, right? But like and in fact, usually, again, it depends on the type of project you're doing, right? It's not everything. Like sure, if you're working on like an ad thing and you need to run more ads, you just throw more money on it. Sure, that might produce what you're looking for, but to do like an engineering project, sometimes, and again, the more technical or the more complex it is, the more usually this applies. But it's like you could throw more money at it, but that doesn't mean it's going to get done quicker or even more efficiently. I think you have to start like at the bottom in that case, and you work your way up to what it would look like, not necessarily
What do you hope to do in the future?
hope to do in the future. Well, I think I don't know. Just I think for me, it's I hope that I can spend time with family and balance my life too. I think a lot of my life was just working, aimlessly sometimes, without that insight and you sometimes that's good. Like that's the practice. Sometimes it's just practice. There's no insight, right? So, but I spent a lot of time like all nighters. I've pulled 24-hour work uh, nights, where you like be doing a deployment. Just your whole like you do a lot of those, and I think at some point you start to realize I should have probably balanced more, um, and you kind of regret that, right? So I like for me maybe that's one of those things I would say.
Hmm. And what would you say is a question that you want to be asked that I haven't asked?
uh, uh, all right, how about like exercise or like fitness? I don't think you brought up any of that. So I'm like there are a couple things like that I like to do. One is I do like fasting. Um, like I like so there'll be mornings where I or like actually day like be like one day where maybe I don't eat. Um, and it changes you. Like it like so I like that. I like the it makes you like a little more aggressive, like a little more like sharp. So, but obviously make sure you eat. And then I think the other thing too, like I like to have like I exercise in the morning, so you do like a little workout. But it's good that I like to have like a lemon water in the morning, with like like some kind of protein shake. So I think it's usually a pretty good morning. Like when if you've kind of put all those together and you do it every morning, you never feel tired. And so I think that's for me like as an engineer, it's easy to feel tired, especially like if you just eat lunch and then you're sitting there coding. You can kind of just start getting dozy. But I think those three tips that I just mentioned essentially for at least for me, maybe it's anecdotal, but it goes away if you kind of do this, and make sure you do the lemon water very first, and then you can then exercise and then do the shake, or you could do the shake and then exercise. Either way is kind of fine, but the lemon water first.
That's mandatory.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Interesting. And what
And well,
what's
and I say it's mandatory not just because like so the lemon inside like when it goes into your stomach, the idea is to clean out your gut. And so if you haven't eaten, if it's the first thing that you take in the morning, it helps to cleanse it. And actually, if you use warm water, it's even better because it loosens the bowels or it just loosens things, and then the lemon's able to take more effect. And it kind of hydrates. It just hydrates and makes you feel energized.
and do you drink coffee?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
And what so after you do your morning routine, do you just like what's your schedule like? Like do you code? Do you write reports? What do you do?
Yeah, it's like a mix. Usually, it could be like code, bug fix, like whatever, like projects or like just side work that I have, which is usually coding or some type of like, architect or SEO like expertise. So usually like whatever side work I have going on. But then other than that, I'm like I actually recently I sold shares in like in one of my companies, and to try to take I want to take some time to try to like come up with like some social media stuff just for like as like a personal kind of project. And so that's been fun. So it's like trying to like use social media to kind of help promote or um, kind of evangelize yourself along with your company. And so I've been kind of doing that a little bit, if that makes sense.
Personal branding.
Yeah, personal branding, I would say. Yeah. But that includes so I might do like live coding sessions, or I've done like gaming sessions, or could even be just music, or live music or whatever. Actually, and then another thing I've been recently getting into is and I would say generalized more around streaming. I've been kind of getting into streaming, but doing like Tesla. They have like these Tesla live spaces that they do on X, where various people in Tesla, or like stakeholders or shareholders of Tesla will be there, and so I live stream that, and then I share that onto other platforms to kind of share the message. I think some people they might call me like, I don't know if that's considered trolling. Maybe it is. I don't know, but yeah.
I see. On the thumbnail, I can write internet troll.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like maybe people like, maybe some of my content is I'm not, it's funny. Maybe here's another question. What is how what if you were to describe a troll in one sentence, how would you describe it?
Yeah, how would you?
I don't know. I was gonna ask you.
I don't know. I try to stay off of that troll thing. Um,
I see. Fair enough.
yeah, it's funny though. I see some of my friends doing it. I'm just like, I just like their posts. It's just
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I think like maybe when I do it, I'm not trying to like take or take credit. It's more of like I'm just trying to understand things, or like playing around or experimenting. I like to experiment. Like, I'm a big like A/B tester. I've done a lot of A/B tests, and so it's more like an A/B test.
So this is the last question I ask all my guests: is what would you tell your 17-year-old self if you could travel back in time?
Um, oh, dude, that's just simple. I mean, shit, buy Bitcoin. Like that'd be simple.
Yeah, outside of like Bitcoin and those things,
All
like
right, fair enough.
like with wisdom, you know.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough. Well, I would say, yeah, if I could go back, it would be it would be again, I feel like I say this all the time, or maybe it's too repetitive, but I would say it's like failure is okay, in this sense. When I was younger, I always thought it all had to be perfect. And in fact, when I was younger, like, you have that pride thing that kicks in sometimes, and so like you like for example, and I'll give you an example. Like, you'd be starting a company, and you think you have the greatest idea in the world, right? And it's fucking not, right? And but you can't let it go, right? And so like that's an example of pride. Um, so I would, if I was to go back in time, I would just explain to my younger self. I'd say, like, look, you're gonna fail, and that's okay. But and you don't want to like try less, because you know that, right? In fact, you want to try more, or prepare for that failure so that you can then step like on it to use it to go up, right? Like, it's like that, right? It's like, can you use the failure to not fail? Like, overall, right? Because you might have like an overall thing you're doing, and you're failing to get there, right? But that doesn't mean like you've the whole thing's failed, right? It just means like you haven't learned yet what you need to get there.
ladies and gentlemen, this is Todd Kueny. Thank you for your time.